This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland one of the lane, locked to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs Media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. Support for this podcast is brought to you by Fubo TV. Watch over 100 channels of live sports and TV for half the cost of cable. There's no contract and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com. The Cleveland Cavaliers dropped their season opener. Darius Garland injures his eye. And joining me today to discuss it all is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well. Jumped the gun on that intro there. I realized I hadn't unmuted you yet, and you were about to start talking. So, crisis averted. And I think the same could be said, I hope, for Darius Garland, who reported by the team, will not need surgery.
Where's their sources? Where's the sources on the Cavs account?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we should trust these guys.
Real shady, but yeah, it does look like the worst has been avoided for Darius Garland. No surgery is required. Nothing structurally wrong there. So you can kind of breathe a sigh of relief. Doesn't sound like there's a scratch cornea or anything like that. So it is going to be a day-to-day situation with him. I saw Chris Fedor had reported that his eye was kind of swollen to the point where it was shut. I would imagine that recovery time is going to be dictated by when does that eye work? When is it no longer swollen shut? But that is certainly better than I think some of the fears that we had, because that looked ugly.
Yeah, it did. Poor guy. Talk about a freak injury. I've never heard of the inside of your eyelid being cut. Obviously scary, obviously a freaking bummer, because I think the Cavs do win that game to open the season if their star point guard is healthy, even though he was having a pretty rough go of it early on in the game. But that's the way it goes sometimes, I guess. And I'm glad that he's not going to need eye surgery, because that's not such a nice sentence to have to say.
No, that would be quite the bummer to start this off. You're right. Garland did not play well to start that game. You could tell he was pressing quite a bit. Who knows? Maybe the fact that the entire place was filled with a smoke bomb contributed to that. But yeah, he wasn't playing well. And I think what we talked about in the pregame podcast was it kind of came to fruition. Both teams were sloppy. You could tell that they hadn't played since Friday, or in the case of Garland, Allen, and Mitchell, hadn't played since Wednesday of the previous week. So there was, you could tell the anxiety was high, the anticipation was high, and he struggled in that game. But we saw in that first Toronto game last year where Garland didn't have a good first half and then scored 17 points in the second half and hit basically the game-winning free throws in that game on really high efficiency. So it's disappointing to see him go down in that way. And I think kind of the physical nature of that game too. It charged the rest of the night because we were already so frustrated with Garland going down.
Yeah, definitely. It was a hyper physical game. That's the way Toronto likes to play. It was certainly frustrating. I think it's especially a challenging style for this team's their bigs and their guards. They really have to. You have to be really intentional with how you play the Raptors. You have to be doing those V cuts to take advantage of the fact that they're overplaying you. You have to slip screens really sharply and smartly, and then make the connecting pass really, really confidently. You have to go up with a layup or a dunk very, very fast, or really pump fake and get them to fly at you. Everything is a little uncomfortable with them, and you have to be really. I think they really were only able to hit a true flow state in that second quarter when they're like, okay, we've gotten comfortable with the way they're going to defend us, and we're starting to generate some easy buckets here. But eventually, I think Toronto, who is has one of the best coaches in the league, they adjusted and they ended up coming back and winning. So it was good basketball for sure, and certainly tactically interesting. But unfortunately, the Cavs just didn't have quite enough juice in the end.
Yeah, and it was frustrating to see the way Toronto defended the Cavs kind of reverted to what they did last year, only with Donovan Mitchell in place of Darius Garland. There was a lot of trapping, a lot of denying the ball, forcing Evan Mobley to be that outlet at the top of the key. And, there were obviously some hiccups when Mobley was trying to handle with the ball pressure of Pascal Siakam. He's an all-NBA player for a reason. He's a very good defensive player. And unfortunately, in those moments, Caris LeVert wasn't stepping up as a playmaker either to kind of relieve some of that pressure. And I think the Cavs definitely got some flow when Toronto went deeper into their bench. When it was Thad Young, Bo Cruz, and Koloko, I think they were able to get a little bit more of a rhythm in those opportunities. But obviously there was a lot of frustration with how the game was called and just kind of the style of play with Toronto. I don't want to get into that too much because honestly, it's subjective on the front end. Both fan bases are going to end up feeling like the calls weren't going their way, although I think it certainly from our perspective felt like the Cavs were dealing with a lot of contact, especially early in the game. But it's also just not interesting podcasting because there's no real takeaways. And I do think there actually is some takeaways from the style of basketball that Toronto plays, because Toronto is able to be physical because they're in position first. They are square up to you. They're bodying you. They're making you feel their presence at all times. And when you look at who got the fouls for the Cavaliers, it wasn't Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. Jared Allen contested 15 shots and was only called for 2 fouls. Evan Mobley contested a bunch of shots and he was only called for 1. Those guys are in position and they're D'ing up and they're making their presence felt. Same goes for Dean Wade, moved his feet, was in position, bodied them up and stayed vertical. Toronto is going to put their body into you when you're driving. But when you have Donovan Mitchell, Caris LeVert, and all the perimeter players that got called for a lot of those fouls, it's light contact, and in comparison to what Toronto is doing, it's going to feel like, oh my God, they're calling that when we're getting mugged on the other end. But really, it's just more obvious contact when you're not in position. And I think that's something that, especially in the case of Isaac Okoro, I think that's something he could really kind of take to heart. And I'd like to see that become part of his game because he is such a strong player and he is able to move laterally that I think he can get in position, body guys up and put his chest into defenders. Obviously not in kind of a block charge situation, but I do think that is a way that he can take his defense to the next level. And that's something I'd like the Cavs as a whole to kind of adopt.
Well, I think the Raptors also, they foul hunted, but in a really smart way where this is one of the best ISO teams in the league. And that's
you blow a tire.
Yeah. It's one of the best ISO teams in the league. That's how they get their buckets, really. Like, they're not a motion offense because, I remember this with the Hayward Celtics teams where I was like, okay, well, you're positionless on defense. Sometimes you can be a little positionless on offense. Sometimes I feel that way about Toronto when things look bad, where it's like, okay, well, everyone kind of has the same skill set, so we're working really hard to gain advantages over nothing. It kind of can stall out your offense in the half court sometimes. I think that they were really smart about who they attacked. And I think the Cavs could have been a lot smarter about how they defended, to be honest. I thought sometimes they would. There were 2-3 possessions in a row where Pascal Siakam got 3-4 bumps on Caris in the post before help came. And I think Caris has been making a lot of effort on the defensive end. I don't think he was a bad defender in this game. Caris LeVert can't guard Pascal Siakam in the post. He's one of the best post scorers in the league for a reason. Got Mobley a couple times. And I found that their defensive principles when guarding those post-ups were a little inconsistent. They left Caris on an island, and then, in the fourth quarter, Siakam's posting up Mobley 14 feet from the basket, and I forget who the defender was. I think OG Anunoby is the one who hit the three, but he was able to make a pass to the strong side, closest offensive player to him, and I think it was Anunoby, and Anunoby hit a backbreaking three when help was shading towards him for no reason, because you don't need to shade when Mobley's on Siakam. He might score, but you don't want to compromise your defense. So I thought that the way they defended the post was just okay in this game. I thought when their help was on point, it was really, really good. Shouts to Jared Allen, who I think was awesome and help in a few positions, but I think it was a good. I think they have good tape to take away from trying to guard this Raptors team and to figure out why they committed a lot of these fouls, because I don't think that the Cavs were. I do think they were trying to answer in kind with physicality, and I think you're right that to some extent it was the wrong kind of physicality or not the right time or position for that physicality.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at the stats for the teams, like Toronto shot under 42%, just under 42% from the floor. They hit a couple of contested threes to open the fourth quarter, but I think the Cavs overall played a pretty good defensive game, but there were clearly those lapses, right? There were the brain farts where you could tell that there was a miscommunication and the guys were out there talking after that play kind of went down, trying to figure out, okay, who was supposed to be where? And that's understandable. Like Evan Mobley didn't get a chance to play with the rest of the starters essentially until this game, and that's part of my frustration with the Garland injury is even if Garland comes back and the eye heals up in time for either Chicago or the Washington game, it's probably going to be a bit of a slower start for him because that's going to be something that kind of lingers and you don't know what the effects are going to be, and they need reps together. Like that is something that is going to take some time, and you would hope that as the season progresses you're going to have fewer and fewer of those lapses. I remember last year early in the season against Memphis and Charlotte in particular, there was a lot of miscommunications and breakdowns in transition where they gave up early easy buckets, and it made us question the viability of Lauri Markkanen at the small forward position. But as the season progressed,
I so specifically remember in that Charlotte game, you turning to me because we were watching that game together. You turning to me and going, This isn't going to work. And I went, yep, you're right. And then it turned into one of the best starting lineups all year. So, like, small sample size theater, guys.
Right, and it's just an example of when new units get together, it's going to take time to learn what each other's tendencies are, when they want help, getting that timing down. I think the help was a bit slow at times. Like you mentioned those Karis LeVert possessions on Siakam. There were other times where like Donovan Mitchell played great post defense on Siakam, which was a big surprise. And I think overall, the encouraging thing and one of the takeaways from this game is even though you did have those lapses, even though the list of guys that could have played a lot better is pretty long, I don't think they got a lot of good performances out of the role players, with the exception of Jetty Osman. Even though you had that long list, it was such a close game in Toronto against a very good team. And I think that's a reflection of why you go out and you get Donovan Mitchell, because now the Cavs actually have a margin for error. If Darius Garland goes down last year, this is a 25-point loss. So like there's absolutely no hope to it. And they've given themselves more of a margin for error. And as they go through this process of learning how to play with one another and going through some of these growing pains, I think they're going to be able to absorb some runs for teams because the overall talent level is just higher this season.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Before we talk about Donovan Mitchell, I do want to kind of put a button on the macro of this game before we jump back into the micro.
Which is screw the Raptors, of course.
yeah, that is the macro. But, I think, like, the reason I leave that game today, yesterday I was very frustrated, but today I'm very encouraged because I thought the stuff that they needed to be good at to, like, demonstrate healthy, functional team, I think they were very, very good at. They moved the ball really, really well. Had a 66% assist percentage in that first game. They scored very efficiently when they got shots up. They had a 60.3 true shooting percentage. When Toronto shot very poorly. They had a 54% true shooting percentage. So where they lost the game was on the margins. Gave up a 37% free throw rate to Toronto, a 32% offensive rebound rate, and then they turned the ball over on 17% of their possessions. So they lost the possession battle, and lost on the margins. But I think, like if you look at the executional side of things, I think that they really did do a nice job. The offense looked pretty good when they took care of the ball. The defense looked great when they stayed in their and when they got Toronto into the half court and dug in. So like I think ultimately, yes, this is exactly, how Toronto wants to win, getting to the line, getting offensive boards, and forcing you into turnovers. But, ultimately, I still feel like the health of I think the team functioned in a pretty healthy way overall for a first game.
Yeah, I agree. And the 12 offensive rebounds that they gave up to Toronto were obviously a backbreaker for them. You need to get a little bit better. I saw some people push back on this when we were discussing the Discord. I think I would have gone Robin Lopez. I think the Mobley at the 5 minutes they just gave up too many rebounds in that time, especially when Dean Wade wasn't out there. And I think I would have had Rolo out there just because Toronto doesn't have a lot of guys that kill you in space. Like they get their shots up, and because they don't have the greatest shooters right now, and they're working to develop the skill part of things, they go out there and they crash the offensive glass. Every single player on that team crashes the glass, and there's possessions where it's frustrating.
And the box out king could have helped.
When Jared Allen got taken to the floor in the fourth quarter, I'm like, you know what? Maybe one of those guys got the ball clean, but at the same time, 4 players in on the play, not all of them got the ball clean. And those were the moments that were frustrating. I also got frustrated in the times like the contact when Toronto gets square and they put their body into you, that's fine. When Donovan Mitchell beats Fred VanVleet off the dribble, the basket's already going in the rim and he gets pushed from behind into the stanchion. Like that's one of those plays that it's like that play drives me more insane than anything else. I had a buddy in high school that tore his ACL on a dirty play like that, and it looked like Mitchell got hurt on that play too. He was frustrated on the bench after, but obviously he stayed in and he was fine. But that's the kind of stuff that it's really frustrating, and I wish there were calls there. But I think the overall level of physicality is something that the Cavs can learn from. Like,
well, they're going to need to. That's playoff defense, and it's going to have. I mean, like part of me, I was certainly grumpy about the physicality, but also I know the Cavs won a title by basically saying we're going to foul the hell out of Steph Curry off ball every single possession for an entire series.
And that's a good experience for Evan Mobley. Like you could tell his handle in space looked good, but when it's tossed to him at the top of the key and Pascal Siakam's bodying him up, that's good experience for him. He's going to need to learn to play that way because if you're playing Miami in a series, they're going to be really physical. Bam's going to be physical on you. You're going to get that a little bit with Philadelphia, not as much. Like Philadelphia is more of kind of a war of attrition and a mental battle, like to make sure that you're staying disciplined, you're not leaving your feet because they're looking to draw that contact rather than initiate the contact like Toronto or Miami will. But even Milwaukee, they play a very physical style of defense, and that's something that the Cavs are going to have to deal with. And we're going to have some growing pains with Evan Mobley creating in those situations. Like you kind of have to accept that as part of the game, and that's part of why you make the move for Mitchell to give you a margin for error, because we're going to have to let him make mistakes in those spots so that he can learn from it and learn to kind of deal with that level of adversity. Like as much as we have expectations for this year, you still want to get those developmental reps. And when I talk about wanting to see Isaac Okoro go out there and play that physical style, you might have to deal with some games where he gets into foul trouble, establishing that, hey, this is the way that I play basketball now. This is the way I'm going to defend. Because if you do it for a consistent enough basis, it's going to shift what the refs consider a foul with you, what they consider contact to be. So there's those opportunities for growth within it. I think overall it's a good experience. It's frustrating when you play Toronto and we've had multiple games in a row where somebody gets hurt because of this style of play.
Yeah, but enough of this.
Yes.
I'm done talking about this. Let's talk about Donnie Mitchell. This guy, man, what a professional ass scorer this guy is. 31 points, 12 of 21 from the field. The 3-pointer was not on for him yesterday. 2 of 8 from 3, but 9 assists to 3 turnovers with some really, really strong playmaking. Really helped get the offense going. Especially was really good at one of the ways you attack a team that loves to switch is to attack the switch. Mm-hmm. And he got a lot of splits of the defense just by dribbling super hard as they were at the two dudes who were trying to navigate the switch. It is a mix of craft and explosiveness, like I think the best example of explosiveness without craft was like rookie year Colin is kind of my example, where all this speed and nothing to do with it, because he couldn't get guys to turn their hips. And obviously, and Colin got way, way, way better at that over the course of his Cavs career. And man, did he look great in Utah. So shouts to our boy Colin.
Oh, man, I was so happy. Sorry to cut you off, but I was so happy for that. I root for all Cavs no matter where they end up. But him getting that win over the Nuggets and going at Jokic, I was so happy for him.
Yeah, it was awesome. But to the point I was making, Donovan is such a great mix of craft and explosiveness. Using his dribble, using his body, generating angles, and then exploding into them to get a step. It was truly a guy that you just couldn't switch on. I think there are not a lot of guys that on this team that are on this Raptors team that. They're like, no, I don't know if this is a good matchup, but like Pascal Siakam on Donovan Mitchell was not a good matchup for the Raptors. He looked really, really good. I thought his his ability to drive and kick was really, really strong. He looked awesome, man.
He really did. And honestly, like, it reminded me a lot kind of when you would watch LeBron with the Cavs, where you just kind of blink and he's got 31 points. Like, it felt very effortless. It didn't feel like he was forcing a lot of shots. It all came within the flow of the game. The playmaking was fantastic. I think what we were talking about with the Locked On guys about, hey, if Jetty Osman's out there with a playmaker, are we going to see a more consistent and reliable version of him? And I think the game one returns are encouraging because Jetty looked to be comfortable. He looked to be playing kind of that in control role and had good chemistry with Donovan Mitchell. So I think that's incredibly encouraging. And I think having Mitchell around is going to benefit Darius Garland in the long run too. Like there are ways that you can learn from the way that he uses angles to knife through defenders, not necessarily overpowering guys, but just the change of pace, all the little moves that he does to avoid contact and to finish. Like, he is just such an effortless scorer and an effortless basketball player, and it's really, really impressive. And I thought he competed well on the defensive end as well. I want to see that continue, because really what we're asking from the guards with the back help that we have is to go out there, to be in position, and to give consistent effort, right? And I think Donovan Mitchell has to this point kept his word on that end of the court, where, hey, I want to commit to contributing more on both ends of the court. I know I can do that. And hopefully Garland will be back soon, because you don't want to get into a position where once again he's being asked to do too much on the offensive end and that taking away from his overall game.
Yeah, I really feel I was very impressed by him also, in the sense of there was a certain naturalness to it already. Yeah. I feel like when you have a really big name join a team that's kind of already established, there's always a little bit of like, is he going to force it? Is he going to try too hard to blend in and be invisible for a minute? And like, it just kind of felt very natural, or like right away I was like, oh man, I want Donovan back out on the floor. Like, we need him. And like, pretty much all game. And I thought that he did compete really well. I like that you shouted out his post defense on a few of those plays. I think using his linebacker body and 6'10" arms, make you a very useful defender even in the post. Even when you're
of the zone
small.
at times.
I was very, very impressed by him. And it's going to be important. It's margin for error, but I think I don't know about you, man, but just watching that game, I was like, I was 10% too low on him as a scorer. Like, I think when there's such a difference when you watch a few playoff games and a few regular season games versus was like, oh, this guy's on our team and he can do this. Oh, yeah. Man. Like, I think I needed to see it to truly understand it.
Yeah, and honestly, like if I reflect on it, like when I'm watching a playoff game, I'm also reading my timeline a whole lot more than when I'm watching a Cavs game. Because Cavs games, I'm sitting there, I'm taking notes, I'm trying to say, okay, I missed that, but making a note of the time so I go back and look at a play or a sequence to figure out what's going on. It's not the same critical eye when I'm watching those other teams. And yeah, I agree. It's probably too low on him at times. And I mean, he just turned 26 years old. He's going to continue to get better. He's just starting to enter his prime and have an understanding of the game. And I thought he had really good chemistry with Allen. I thought he had good chemistry with Mobley, and that's going to continue to build. It's going to get better as the season progresses. And I'm really excited, man. Like, this is a very exciting chapter of Cavs basketball. And I mean, it's nice to get to the point where you get so frustrated over these games, especially when you feel like you could win. And you obviously look at the injury as being part of that equation as well. But it's nice to be back in this situation where these games really, really do matter. And it got me right back into regular season mode. Like, there were so many takeaways. And the other thing that jumped off the screen was, my God, was Jared Allen good on the defensive end of the court. Like, I thought he had a fantastic game overall, but the help defense, the blocks that he had, I know he only got credited with 2, but it felt like he had more than
at least
that.
3 or 4. Yeah, he was awesome. A little left to be desired on the defensive boards, but made up for it with 5 offensive boards. I just think ultimately, like, it very much is as he goes, the Cavs go, and I think his size and strength really do go a long way. I think he certainly got beat up a little bit as much as any Cav.
Yeah.
Had a few times getting the ball knocked out of his hands, or and I think the Cavs a couple times also didn't do him a lot of favors. They gave him a couple low passes, which is just like chum in the water for the Toronto Raptors. But I thought he played a really, really strong game. And yeah, I think right now he's still the best defender on the team.
I think so too, and I like that he showed off the Frollo hook shot. You can tell hanging out with Robin Lopez has done him some favors there. So, I like his post game. Like, I like that he quickly established his position. If there's a lot of health defense swarming, he kicks it out. He makes the right reads in those situations, and when that doesn't happen, he can score pretty effortlessly in the post. Like, he's got nice touch. He can go either direction. His footwork, the drop steps, it's all very, very high level and fundamentally sound. So it's nice to have Jared Allen out there. And I mean, it's been a while since we've seen healthy Jared Allen playing in a regular season game for the Cavs, and it was like a warm, cozy blanket. I had missed what he brought to the table.
Absolutely. Him and Mobley had a couple really nice handoffs where one kind of got out of position to go help clean up a mess, and then the other one helped clean up that mess, and then the other one helped clean up that mess, and they got out of a few possessions. I believe their pairing on the floor, when they were on the floor for about 12, 13 minutes, no, it was closer to 20. The Cavs gave up about 104 defensive ratings. So not like insane, but certainly the standard that you would kind of expect at minimum from those guys. It was nice to see him back for sure.
Yeah, it was an old reliable friend, just like our sponsor Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. Obviously, the other half of that big man tandem was Evan Mobley. I thought he had an overall pretty okay game. Nothing spectacular for him outside of a few flashes. The full court possession that he had was insanely fun. He had a couple amazing defensive plays, deflections, and was disruptive on that end. There was the one potential lob to Jared Allen where he threw it just a little off. You could tell that the timing isn't still there yet, and that's definitely a product of him not getting the opportunity to play with these guys in the preseason and only really getting that one half of preseason play. But the flashes were certainly there with Mobley, and overall it's encouraging because you can tell that there is growth from him. Him splashing that 3-pointer early in the game was really exciting, and the handle looks better. Like he did get disrupted at times with the defense of Pascal Siakam, but the open court handle, the quickness that he had with it, and other opportunities when he was putting it on the floor, you can tell like he's a little more solid with the ball than he was last season.
Yeah, I mean, I think the play of the game, and if you're watching on YouTube, I think we're about to see it. Actually, for me, the full court play was amazing, but this one right here where he just straight up whooshes past Scotty Barnes starting at the 3-point line for a layup. I was like, my God, he did not have that layup in his pack. He did not have that in his package. Just a nice little jab step in and then go and just scoots right around Scotty for the layup. I thought he looked pretty good on the offensive side of the ball. I think this is also a weird matchup for him, just because of how aggressive Toronto plays, and they kind of, like, he's a big redwood, and the Raptors are a bunch of people with axes just chopping away at your legs and body, and it's hard for tall, skinny dudes, even though Mobley's obviously gotten stronger to play well in that space. So I thought he was okay. That's the way I would frame it as well. I think there were some times where he could have imposed his will a little bit more, and I think 6 boards in 36 minutes is a little disappointing to me.
Agreed. That's one of the areas where he could definitely improve, especially in this game. Yeah,
I think the Cavs, that was an at times weakness for him last year. I think it's still something that he needs to work on. The 3 turnovers are also a little bit tough. But and he got a couple times where Siakam absolutely put in a beauty of a rainbow fadeaway over him, but I thought he defended pretty well in isolation for the most part. So no major complaints out of Evan. I just think I wouldn't say it was like one of his stronger efforts, but I would say this is about the floor I would expect from him, which is it's a high floor.
It is a high floor, and we have high expectations for him, right? Like we're going to see games where there is a bit of a struggle from him, like as he continues to expand his game, and it's going to be a process. It's why you have him surrounded by more finished products in Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, and Jared Allen, right? Because it gives him that leeway to really kind of find his own footing and explore what he's able to do on the basketball court. So for a first real full game and for the first time, going out there and playing 30 plus minutes, like that takes time, right? Like you have to get your conditioning up to game shape again. There's no amount of practicing. There's no amount of scrimmaging that's going to do that. You can only get that at the NBA level. And this is about as tough of a matchup as there is. Like even in the best case scenario, you would expect when you play the Raptors that Darius Garland isn't going to have one of his best games of the season because of the way that they play. You expect the same thing with Evan Mobley. Like they are a really good defensive team. They play really physically and they make things uncomfortable for you. And that's really valuable experience for this team because, as we said before, there's teams in the Eastern Conference that are going to play that style. And it's something that the Cavs are going to have to adjust to and eventually, give it back to those teams, right? Like figure out the ways, figure out the spots where they can go out and impose their will and impose some physicality on them. Like it makes me think back to the bad boy Pistons and Michael Jordan trying to get over that hump, right? Like this is one of those things that you really only learn it from experience. And I do think that it is very valuable experience for them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It was an interesting, a lot of learning lessons here in game 1. And I think the next one I want to ask you about is the new starting lineup and most specifically Karis LeVert. LeVert got the starting gig, which, I think most of the public kind of facing quotes and reporting kind of indicated this would happen. I had held out hope for an Isaac Okoro earning that gig, but it was Karis. And what did you think? Because I thought there were some really, really encouraging things. I thought there was some stuff where I was like, meh. But at no point really was I ever too. I saw some Twitter takes where it's like, oh, LeVert is just getting killed out there, and I don't know if I agreed with those. What did you think?
I think it was a tale of two halves for Karis LeVert. I thought the first half he played really well as a connector. He made some really nice passes and was playing within himself. I think he was really giving defensive effort and trying to make his presence felt there. He was shuffling his feet. His hands were out. Maybe a little handsy on the defensive end of the court. But, he was out there making an effort, and I thought he played well. And then the second half, it felt reminiscent of last season, where there's the trapping pressure on the primary initiator in Donovan Mitchell, and Karis LeVert. It felt like he was over dribbling a little too much in the second half. The dribble was a little loose. He was pressing a bit, and what we had talked about in the preview podcast was the fact that you do have Garland and Mitchell there. It kind of helps keep him in check and keep him playing within his strengths. And it was just disappointing that in a second half, when you don't have Garland, where you could kind of use another reliable initiator, I think he recognized that that's what the Cavs needed in that moment, and you started pressing a little bit too much, trying to do a little bit too much on the offensive end of the court, and it kind of got away from the game flow and what the Cavs were trying to do. It's understandable, but at the same time, I did think the second half left a little to be desired.
I just think ultimately, man, the second I saw Karis was starting, I was like, I'll bet he's not going to have that good of a game, because Toronto, more specifically, I bet he's not going to have that good of a game, and people are going to be too down about it, because I think Toronto is a horrible matchup for Karis. Horrible. Beating Toronto is all about being explosive and decisive with the ball. Those are not things I would describe Karis with. He is a guy who has that herky-jerky game, likes to dribble, likes to kind of elbow his way to good angles. The Raptors, it's really hard to do that against almost any perimeter defender on the Raptors. He also,
honestly, what the Raptors practice against, because they practice against each other, it's guys elbowing their way into shots.
You're not wrong. And then furthermore, I think when he does get bodied, the handle gets a little bit loose.
Yeah.
So I think there were some times where he had an advantage and the handle got just a smidge away from him, and while he was recapturing it, the advantage got lost. So I think it's a really hard matchup for him. So ultimately, I was actually really happy with how Karis acquitted himself. I loved that he had 7 assists to just 1 turnover. I thought he did move the ball really well. I like that he got to the line a little bit. I like that he hit both of his threes. And then I think ultimately I just feel like defensively, I think the Cavs failed Karis more than Karis failed Karis. Yes, he got beat up on 2-3 consecutive Pascal Siakam post-ups. So would any 2 or 3, pretty much. You have to help. It's an all
starting center.
Yeah, it's an all NBA level player. And so I did not watch that game thinking Karis is going to be if I have concerns about Karis as a defender, this game did not exacerbate or confirm them. I thought he played fine on that end. I thought he was, I thought he played heavy minutes. I thought he had in a tough matchup, he did what he could. Obviously. And by the way,
he was like the inverse of the LeBronto memes, where it's we got PJ Tucker, the LeBron stopper. Please stop. No, Pascal Siakam, he said, I was unfortunately forced to watch the Cavs or the Raptors cable broadcast living up here, but he's talking before he wants to be viewed as a top 5, top 10 player and wants to take that next step. He just turned 28 years old and he's in the prime of his career, and I thought he had a great game. The other part of this equation is Toronto is a really good team. They have a lot of length, they have a lot of depth, and they're a really tough matchup. So I think you're right in kind of highlighting the stops weren't there, but at the same time, the help defense wasn't there, and it's not an easy matchup for him. You don't bring in Karis LeVert to be a Pascal Siakam stopper.
No, you don't. And to if there were concerns about over dribbling, I do think the Cavs gave Karis the ball quite a bit. But he only shot 7 times. It's not like this guy was chucking. So, I thought he was helpful. I thought, and being helpful, Karis LeVert historically, if you are a Karis LeVert skeptic, your general thesis is he needs 20 shots to be helpful. and I thought he was helpful on 7 shots. So I was okay with it. I still have some long-term skepticism about the starting lineup because I still think you're asking Karras to do a lot of things. You're asking him to kind of be someone who he's kind of not, or at least work really hard at those parts of his game. And maybe he can do it. But, ultimately, I don't think that this game was evidence that he wasn't the right spot. And frankly, his competition didn't do so hot either in Isaac Okoro.
Yeah, and I want to get to that in a second, but I share your skepticism. I mean, it's a repeat of last season. Like, both of us had skepticism over the Lowry mark. Season has started and we are skeptical about the Cavs small forward. Like, this is a consistent theme, but learning from the past and learning from our mistakes, I'm trying to keep an open mind, right? And I do think that there is something to when Caris LeVert is an expiring contract and you have to make a decision on him by the end of the year. I think you do have to give him some runway and really kind of feel this out and allow him to work through some stuff and figure out whether or not this can work, because the Cavs need to make a decision. And the more information they have, the more opportunities you give these guys to either step up in the role or fail within that role. That's going to inform the decision making at the trade deadline. That's going to inform the decision making in the offseason. And I do like when Chris Fedor reported the starting lineup that this is going to be the decision for the foreseeable future. Like, I like giving these guys stretches within the season where they know they're guaranteed this role. You earn this role in the buildup of camp and preseason. We have a sample size here, and you earn this role. So we're going to give you the opportunity to make adjustments to try to keep this role and prove that this can work. So this is obviously a learning experience for Caris LeVert, but I agree. It is a tough matchup, and I'm interested to see. Frustrated that we might have to wait, but I am interested to see what this team looks like fully whole and with more reps together, because I think that's the biggest thing. But you are right. The other part of this equation, the other contender for that starting small forward spot was Isaac Okoro, who had a very rough 11 minutes. 4 fouls in 11 minutes. And
a turnover.
And a turnover.
And an air ball 3.
And an air ball 3. It was not pretty for Isaac. Again, when we talk about the difference in the kind of contact in this game, Isaac Okoro is coming in transition where it's very obvious if there is any contact, and he wasn't in position. I thought a couple of them were soft, but the other ones, like, it's going to stand out in those situations.
I mean, like, he got caught out against Fred VanVleet twice in transition, and VanVleet is an elite foul drawer. I mean, what are you going to do?
It's unfortunate. It's frustrating. I mean, there's just no sugarcoating it. It was an awful performance for him. But we've seen him bounce back from bad performances in the past. And, there's really not a whole lot to talk about because he didn't do a lot on the court. He needs to do more when he's out there. We've seen that he is more capable of that. I think what we saw in preseason of the improved handle and the footwork and all that kind of stuff, I think that is going to translate. But none of that showed. And I think if you're doing the scorekeeping of who's performing better as the small forward, it was Caris last night.
No doubt. Though I thought Dean Wade gave him some good minutes. I think his plus minus lied. I think his plus minus lied a little bit.
Yeah, I was happy with Dean Wade. I thought he made some really nice moves out there. I really like Dean Wade, man. Like, I'm happy that he's part of the rotation. Like, he brings it every time he's on the court. And
we're burying the lead, buddy, because our boy Jetty Osman had himself a game. I'll tell you what. This guy, you just can't quit him. I would have had him 4th or 5th in the small forward rankings, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, why?" I saw Caris got 35 and Okoro only got 12. Like, what is? I'm like, Jetty was taking all the minutes because he was playing awesome. I think ultimately Jetty still provides something only Kevin Love also provides off this bench, which is a quick trigger from distance and just a super aggressive offensive play style. I thought he was really, really good in this game. And I don't see how, and by the way, it was noteworthy that, we talked about whether it would be Jetty getting minutes in that 10th spot. It was kind of down to Jetty, Neto, or Rolo. It was Jetty in this game. Yep. And obviously if Darius is out, that changes the equation a little bit. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him back in again on Saturday, given how well he played last night.
Just when I thought I was out, he pulls me back in. Cedi Osman, you're right. And I think it was telling when you look at that rotation at the start of the game. Darius Garland and Evan Mobley were the first subs out, basically allowing them to play with the second unit. And you had Donovan Mitchell playing as the backup point guard functionally, right? I believe he was out there with Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, Kevin Love, and Jared Allen, which I do like as a unit. I'm interested to see what that looks like against some other teams. But I do think if Donovan Mitchell is functionally playing as the backup point guard in the same way that Evan Mobley plays as the backup center, that opens up more minutes for more small forwards and wings to get opportunities and play there. So I think that means that Cedi Osman likely is higher in the rotation than Raul Neto. And I'm interested to see if he continues to build on this chemistry with Donovan Mitchell. Can he be that consistent contributor? Because you look at the first few months of last season, and he was pretty reliably a good contributor off the bench. And we've talked about it before. It's point Cedi gets hairy, right? He's going to go maybe a little outside of his comfort zone, and things can get sketchy. He'll take shots that are a little outside of his skill set. But I thought he was playing well within himself, and that chemistry, the pass that Mitchell made, I believe it was in the third quarter, where it was the behind the back pass to Cedi in the corner. I could not believe that look, and Cedi knocked it down confidently. If you're giving him good, clean looks, he's a very good shooter, and he's going to knock those looks down.
Yeah, I mean, Ben in the chat made the comment, as long as the hook is quick, there's no reason Cedi shouldn't get a look during games. And I'm inclined to agree, because he is the highest ceiling player on this bench, short of Kevin Love right now. And he is. There's a reason he's been behind many a Cavalanche in his day. He was awesome. Before we close, because I know we're kind of getting near the end here, I do want to have a quick spiel in defense of my hero, Raul Neto.
That poor guy.
Wasn't expecting to play.
Here's the thing. I'm sorry to cut off your spiel, but honestly, Cedi was higher than him in the rotation. He was not expecting to play, and that man got thrown into a bar fight.
Yeah, guys, it's like he's Kevin Pangos out here. He's never played a game in the NBA. He's been in the league for 6 years and has been good, a useful player all 6, and everyone's just like, we're out on Neto, same problems as last year. And I'm like, my God. He's -8 in 6 minutes. He didn't look good, but geez, give him a second, huh?
Poor Raul, man. I don't think he was expecting to play, and that was a tough situation to get thrown into there.
I don't think he played well, but my God, people really just gave up at once.
Look, the trauma of last year is going to come to the surface.
Clearly, some of y'all need to talk through your problems. That is my takeaway.
And some of y'all includes me at times. It wasn't necessarily with Raul Neto, but man, my Raptors PTSD certainly kicked in, and I was not proud of myself how I was reacting in real time. It was like an out-of-body experience, me watching myself tweet. I'm like, I don't like going this hard on the refs. I don't like the way that I'm tweeting, but I just couldn't help myself. It was just like every now and then you just get that comment from someone with 150 followers that's cheering on the Garland injury, and it's just like, no, I'm going to.
We all have it's. Have you seen that Brooklyn Nine-Nine clip where they argue about doctors and whether people with PhDs are doctors? I'll send you the clip, because basically Andre Braugher just goes absolutely nuts, and a hard cuts away. He goes, apparently that was a trigger for me. The Raptors are a trigger for you, pal.
Oh, it gets ugly, man.
You can't help yourself.
There's too much bad blood, and I'm not a big fan of the fan base. Although it was very helpful to kind of look at the Cavs injury announcement and some of those other tweets, and just go through the code tweets and everyone that's celebrating the Garland injury. Just for my own mental health, just block, because none of those people are ever going to positively contribute to my timeline. So that was at least a healthy exercise for me. But you're right. Bench players are inconsistent by nature. That's why they are bench players. They can play well, and I don't think Neto was necessarily expecting to get in that game. And you know what? Like, for the current version of Isaac Okoro, he's a bench player. He's going to have good and bad games, and I'm sure he's going to have opportunities to play better and get a more consistent role with his team. And if not, evaluations are going to need to be made. But again, he's a 21-year-old, and I think patience, it's tough because we are balancing player development and patience with realistic expectations for the season. Like, I think we should continue to hold this team to a high standard, but that's going to be something that we're going to have to balance out throughout the course of our coverage this season and just the way we view this team.
Yeah, it is. I'm just glad you got through. I'm glad you got through your trigger, and we've survived, Justin. You know, much like
I don't like them, man.
I know you don't, and you got too much baggage on this one. Let's go play the Bulls. Who cares?
Yeah.
Just a nice divisional rival.
Andrew Sharp's Wizards. Why is our home opener on the second night of a back-to-back while I'm just being bitter and complaining?
Well, why does Darius get hurt every time we come to Cleveland? Is the better question.
That's
because he was even hurt at the All-Star game.
Yeah, no, that's me.
This might be on us.
Cleveland. It's on me. It's
well,
on
yeah,
me. It's
you're
not.
right.
It's not on us. It's on me. And for those that don't know the history, I'll give the quick rundown. My first flight and my first time ever going to Cleveland, Kyrie tore his shoulder. That was in 2014, and he missed all 3 games. When I flew down in 2015, Kevin Love, a Linux incident. That was great. Didn't fly down in 2016. You're welcome. That was complete paranoia. And then, of course, last year, come down for the Memphis game. Garland rolls his ankle. The year before was actually okay. In Garland's rookie year was okay. Nobody got hurt, but Kevin Porter Jr. did get thrown out of one of those games for a body check, I think. But you know, it's been a rough stretch. But I'm hoping that the swelling comes down and we get to see Garland at least once. If Garland does miss some time, because he hasn't necessarily been ruled out for Chicago, I can imagine that if the swelling comes down and he's able to see out that eye, there's a possibility he plays. Maybe we get Darius out there. Darius Goggle.
I would love to see him in some goggles. I think that'd be good for his aesthetic.
It would be an interesting look, but if he does miss some time, who are you starting?
Oh, I'll start Donnie and Okoro and Karras. That's a lineup.
Assuming Donovan would start.
That's a lineup I'm interested in anyway. So let's just throw it out there.
Yeah, I think it would probably be Okoro. It seemed like he was the runner-up in that competition, so you'd assume that he'd kind of get that look at small forward. If they do have rebounding issues, though, I would be interested in more Dean Wade minutes at the small forward position. That's something to monitor moving forward. Like I think Evan Mobley does have the ability to be a better rebounder than he was in that game. But if we do have those issues and you need to make in-game adjustments, I wouldn't mind seeing Dean Wade get a little bit more of a look in those situations.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind though. I don't think Dean's that great of a rebounder either. But you know, I think that ultimately, whether it's Neto that starts and they just kind of hold the rotations in place or not, you know, I'm not super worried about it. I still think they have the depth to kind of support it and be able to keep the train on the tracks. They just happen to play a really great defensive team that put the clamps on in the fourth.
Yep, absolutely. Well, it happens. I'm looking forward to flying down to Cleveland. We will be there for both the Washington game and the Orlando game. Really looking forward to it. Cleveland is my second home. I love the city, and I have to break out my summer gear again, man. It's going to be nice while we're there.
Hell yeah, brother. We're gonna and gang. If you're gonna be in town, we're gonna be we'll swing by Flannery's or something before the game on Sunday, and meet up with some folks. So. And obviously, if you're going to the opener, come say hi to us. We'll be around and excited to be back in the land, man.
We'll also be doing a Twitter Spaces at 4 on Sunday with Kelsey Russo of The Athletic, which we're really looking forward to that. We should also have a podcast as well during the week. Obviously, it's a little more difficult when we're no longer in our home bases, but we will have content up for you guys, and then we will be back on this twice-a-week schedule. Really looking forward to be podcasting again. Happy to be doing it with you, buddy. And big thanks to all our listeners as well. You guys, your enthusiasm throughout the offseason, it kept us going, and we really, really do appreciate it. If you're listening live on YouTube, like, subscribe, click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs!